Gamers, we just got a huge win. I'm talking Steam Deck gamers, Windows gamers, anybody that plays games on a PC. And it's thanks to CrowdStrike. You know, that thing that went haywire and kind of broke everything a little while ago? Yeah, we may be getting a win thanks to that. I'll talk about that. Plus, Valve just shipped what might be a big update for SteamOS. It could mean that we could soon see SteamOS on other handhelds sooner rather than later, though it also might not. I'm going to talk about that. I'm also going to talk about a sale that's currently happening on Steam right now that brings big updates to some classic games. So if that sounds good, get comfortable, get subscribed, and let's get started. Whenever somebody asks me which gaming handheld they should get, my answer is always, it depends. It depends on what kind of games do you like to play. Are you really into Game Pass? Do you love live service multiplayer games that depend on anti-cheat solutions? If so, then you should probably get a Windows handheld. My current Windows handheld of choice is the ROG Ally X, thanks to its massive 80 watt-hour battery. But if you don't play those types of games, then the Steam Deck is my usual recommendation. It's simple, it's pretty cheap when you compare it to other alternatives. It's, in my opinion, the most comfortable handheld PC out there right now. And on top of all that, the OLED screen is just gorgeous. But in the future, that answer might change. And even Valve couldn't have predicted why that answer might change. We may soon see big changes to anti-cheat software. I hate cheaters, hate them. They take what little time I have to actually sit down and play video games and ruin it by acting like morons whose only way of getting joy is ruining somebody else's good time. You know, I guess I should define what I mean by cheaters. I don't mean somebody that cheats in a single player game. If that's how you find your fun, it doesn't affect me. I'm able to mind my own damn business. I'm talking about the morons that they can't win at games fairly, so they use cheats to make it impossible for them to lose. It's not like I'm saying that it's bad to be bad at video games. I'm bad at video games and I lose, and it doesn't bother me when I lose because it's fair. It's when I lose and it's not fair that it drives me crazy. Cheaters suck. They suck big time. It's like they're trying to compensate for something that makes them feel inadequate. In my house, I guess we would call them pole vault champions. If you watched the Olympics this year, I think you probably get the reference. Anyway, cheaters are bad. I think almost everyone can agree on this. So what is the solution? Well, the solution so far has been anti-cheat software. But at the same time, it isn't. Because while anti-cheat software will absolutely catch some people that are cheating, it isn't going to catch them all. And while some people might say, don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good, trust me, I get what you're saying. But a lot of anti-cheat software runs at what is called the kernel level, which means, in a completely super simple way of describing it, so don't yell at me if I screw it up. You know what? More comments for engagement. Yell at me if you want. Anyway, here's what it means. It means that basically the software has access to the entire machine. Everything that your computer is doing can be monitored and reported by that software. It's kind of like the government installing cameras in your bathroom to make sure that you're not cheating on your taxes. Will it catch some tax cheats? Sure, maybe, but it isn't really necessary, and it's a really bad idea. Remember a few weeks ago when everything broke? Well, everything on Windows broke. Everything on Windows with CrowdStrike broke. If you forgot, let me refresh your memory, and I promise I will relate this back to video games in just a second. CrowdStrike is software that runs at the kernel level, so it has access to everything, like I said before. There was a bug, and it caused 8.5 million computers to blue screen, essentially. In response to that, Microsoft is signaling that it might not want software to have this kind of access to the kernel. Now, back in 2006, Microsoft tried to restrict third parties from accessing the kernel, but cybersecurity firms and regulators in the EU stepped in and said, no, you can't do that. Fast forward to 2020, Apple was able to make those restrictions. So Microsoft might be able to show that they were right back in 2006, and that is fantastic news. Here's what Microsoft actually said. These examples use modern zero-trust approaches and show what can be done to to encourage development practices that do not rely on kernel access. We will continue to develop these capabilities, harden our platform, and do even more to improve the resiliency of the Windows ecosystem, working openly and collaboratively with the board security. I'm sorry, I said that wrong. With the broad security community. The reason that this is so important to gaming, especially on Steam Deck or SteamOS, is that one of the major barriers to playing games on those systems is commonly used kernel-level anti-cheat. It just doesn't work on Steam Deck or SteamOS. So you can't play those games on Steam Deck. This is because SteamOS is Linux-based, and we're really only playing Windows games through the Proton translation layer. If kernel-level anti-cheat isn't really effective, and it limits who can play games, why do publishers insist on using it? Well, probably because the people playing on Linux are a very small segment of the population. It's about 2% of PC gamers. And it's easier to just buy into some software solution that will catch many cheaters, even if it won't catch all of them. But if Windows effectively eliminates kernel access for third-party software providers, this would be the end to kernel-level anti-cheat, and it would make it much easier for publishers to get behind something that might not be quite as effective as kernel-level anti-cheat, but it will allow games to be run on different operating systems like SteamOS. If this happens, I wouldn't expect it to be a quick change. This kind of thing takes time, and I'm sure that Microsoft will see the same pushback that they saw back in 2006, only this time they'll have specific evidence that points to third-party software having kernel-level access causing massive issues. And Apple was able to do it in 2020, so perhaps they'll be able to lock things down the way that they want to. It's strange, this morning when I woke up, I didn't see myself putting Microsoft in the good guy's shoes. I'm sure there is context that I'm missing here, and everything isn't nearly as black and white as I just made it sound, so if I got stuff wrong, let me know in the comments down below that like button and you can educate the rest of us. Every single time I get sick of waiting, Valve says, okay, let's ship it. Or at least that's what it feels like, because Valve just shipped SteamOS Beta 3.6.9, and it has a feature, or the beginnings of a feature, that I asked for a couple of weeks ago, back when I did my full month-long review of the ROG Ally X, link down below. In that video, I mentioned that Steam doesn't recognize the ROG Ally or Ally X as a controller on its own. Steam sees these devices as Xbox controllers. Xbox controllers don't have gyro. They don't have back buttons. Because of this, you need to utilize Armory Crate in order to get that functionality in your games. It isn't a big deal. I will say at launch, I'd say the Armory Crate was a bit of a mess, but Asus has put in the work, and as of this recording, Armory Crate is actually a pretty great user experience. But it isn't what I prefer. I prefer Steam Big Picture mode, but as of right now, that isn't really an option when you're running on a non-Steam handheld, because because you won't have access to those extra controls. Well, Valve just shipped this new beta feature, and it says added support for extra ROG Ally keys, which could mean one of a few things. Either Valve is about to implement this feature that I requested into Steam, so big picture mode on the ROG Ally is about to get better. Or another option is Valve is getting ready to ship SteamOS for the ROG Ally and Ally X. Now, I'm going to talk about those first two options because those make the most sense to me. But for the third option that I haven't mentioned yet, I needed somebody a little bit more experienced with this kind of thing to explain it to me, so I will tackle that in a little bit. So I grabbed my ROG Ally, which is running Windows. I updated Steam to the most recent beta, and nothing happened. Steam is still detecting the ROG Ally as an Xbox controller. So that means no gyro, no mapping the Armory Crate or the Command Center buttons, no mapping the macro buttons on the back. This makes me think that this update has nothing to do with Steam on Windows and more to do with SteamOS itself. So I grabbed my ROG Ally X, which is currently running Bazzite, which is essentially SteamOS. I updated the system just like I would if I were on the Steam Deck. I set the operating system to be on release candidate, and I set the Steam updater to be on beta, which is 3.6.9, and no joy. It still wasn't showing me the extra buttons. It still wasn't mapping the right way. This could be because Bazzite uses handheld daemon, which allows you to emulate a different controller so that, you know, the operating system sees the buttons on the ROG Ally X as a PlayStation controller, and currently there's no way to set it as the ROG Ally X, but that's beside the point. The actual point is that right now, it doesn't seem like this update actually did anything. So why is this in the change notes? Well, a little bit ago, I said it could be one of a few things, and then I only gave you two things. The third option is that this actually doesn't mean anything. This is what's known as a kernel-level update. Now, here I want to point out that I'm not a developer, so if I get this wrong, sorry. But after talking to a couple of people who understand this stuff far more than I do, this is what I've come away with. Currently, Valve is on Linux kernel 6.5. Just about every 2 months, there's a new kernel that's created. Updating to a new kernel every single time that there's a new kernel is ridiculously aggressive. So that's not something that Valve is probably going to do. Valve probably will do it about once a year. In fact, Valve pulls two types of updates: the full kernel update infrequently, and then more often they cherry pick things to pull, like controller support. The last time that they updated the full kernel was SteamOS 3.5, which was about 10 months ago. But Valve doesn't actually control the kernel for SteamOS. They use the same kernel that every other Linux distro does. Because of that, lots and lots of people can push updates to that kernel. So let's say that I'm somebody working on the Linux kernel and I decide, you know what, I want to make sure that the kernel can support this weird controller that I have. Once those updates are approved, I can then push those updates to the kernel. And then the next time that Valve pulls stuff from the kernel, my updates are going to come with it. So what may have happened is somebody pushed these changes to the Linux kernel, and then Valve pulled the kernel for their latest update, and it also brought those changes along with it, including the new support for the ROG Ally and Ally X buttons. This information ended up in the changelog. So literally this could mean absolutely nothing. But if Valve is getting ready to support the ROG Ally and the Ally X, this would be a step that they would want to take, making sure that all of the hardware of the Ally and Ally X would be compatible with Linux. But only time will tell. So we're just going to have to wait and see what happens. I've seen a lot of people saying that this indicates that Valve is about to ship SteamOS for other handhelds, and that was my initial reaction too. But after talking to people about this, I'm a lot more skeptical that that's what's about to happen. Finally, there is a Bethesda-themed sale. That is very hard to say. Bethesda-themed sale happening right now on Steam. And I'm not 100% sure, but I think that we get one about this time of year every year because of QuakeCon. Anyway, right now you can pick up Starfield for 33% off, Doom Eternal for 75% off. Hell, you can even get the entire Fallout franchise bundle for just $55. Now you can head out to the wasteland just like Walton Goggins.
I'd offer you one of these cherry tomatoes, but you got a hole in your neck.
But the thing that caught my eye is that Doom 1 and Doom 2 just got a really cool update. This is already available on console and PC, so you can play these games on your favorite handheld. The new features include cross-platform deathmatch, co-op for up to 16 players. I can't imagine playing Doom in co-op with 15 other people. That just sounds bananas. Anyway, the game also has a new renderer, better accessibility options, a remixed soundtrack that sounds amazing, and up to 120 hertz at 4K. On top of all that, they even have worked with Night Dive Studios and Machine Games to make a new episode for Doom called Legacy of Rust. The new deathmatch maps are included. You can get Doom Classic Bundle with all of that stuff that I just mentioned for $12, or you can get the entire Doom franchise bundle for $34. Absolutely fantastic deal. And you know what else would be absolutely fantastic is if you checked out this video right here. YouTube seems to think you're going to love it. From the NerdNest, I'm Bill. Stay rad. Thanks for watching.